Hey guys, welcome back. So I thought it'd be very interesting to do a video on my mom's reaction to me introducing her to Dr. Umar Johnson. Now you guys know that I'm an avid supporter of Dr. Umar Johnson and his work to build the FDMG Academy, to unite all Africans across the diaspora. Like, I'm with it, and I've been with it. I've been following him for a while. I actually was first introduced to Dr. Umar Johnson back in, I think, 2014. I met him not in person, though. I have not met Dr. Umar Johnson in person, but I saw him on the Hidden Colors documentary series because my ex-boyfriend, my boyfriend at the time, had introduced me to him. It was actually our first date. Our first date was to watch the Hidden Colors documentary, and I just fell in love with his oratory, his work, and yes, it's just what he's doing is just so powerful, I think, for the African American community, and it goes deeper, goes beyond the African American community. So most of you guys know who Dr. Umar Johnson is. So I figured that since I am in Florida, right, I'm going to be in Florida for a little while, visiting family. I wanted to get my mom's reaction to Dr. Umar because I support him. I like him a lot. Not only do I support him, but you guys know, I have a crush on Dr. Umar. And I told her this. She was like, oh, you do, huh? You got a crush on him? You do? So my mom is not here with me right now. And unfortunately, I didn't get her actual reaction here on camera. So you guys won't be able to see her actual reaction. But I'll tell you guys what she said, you guys. This is going to be funny. Cheers. This is cranberry juice, by the way. So basically, I was telling her about Dr. Umar Johnson, and we were watching. I showed her some clips. So I'm going to play this clip that I showed her, and we're going to talk about it. I'm going to tell you guys what she was saying, what her reaction was. And then I also played the interview. I played a short clip from, no, actually, I think she saw the entire interview because I started it off, we were watching it together, then I went to go take a shower, and she was like, when I got the shower, she was still watching the interview, the one that he did with Nick Cannon. That was a very powerful interview, by the way. But when I was in the shower and I got out, she was still watching, and she was really intrigued. I'm like, okay, he got her attention. But it makes sense though, because I think it's just his delivery, the way he communicates. It's just very engaging, and not only that, I think it's just her language too. I noticed, one thing I noticed when I came back home to visit family is that, I don't know if your family does this, but my family just they yell when they talk. It's just, everyone talks very loud and yell. I think it's a cultural thing. And it's funny because everyone hears everyone, right? And everyone is talking all at the same time. When I came back, we met at my sister's place. Everyone was over there, my cousins, my aunt, everybody, right? My nieces and nephews, my mom. And it was so many conversations going on at one time. I'm just how do y'all understand each other? But everybody understood each other. Everybody was talking at the same time and just yelling. My mom yells, so I think that's she kind of resonate with Dr. Umar, because people think that he yells. I mean, he projects his voice. I look at it that way. I like his delivery. I love his delivery, and I told him don't change the way you communicate. Keep it up, because that's what we vibrate to, right? So I'm gonna play this clip. No, my mom been woke. My mom is woke. I would say my mom is woke. My mom, of course, I think and also I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I wanted to preface this video to say that you got to be mindful of the age of my parents. Now, I will be 38 in September. My mom is 68. My dad will be 80 on Sunday, this Sunday coming up. So you think of the period where she grew up in, My mom grew up during segregation. You feel me? So she get it. I think the thing is though, a lot of parents, yeah, and a lot of people in that generation, especially even Dr. Umar Johnson's father, many have a different approach. Many say, all right, they felt the pain, right, from the struggle of being segregated. And you know, it's like they want to continue. There's no problem continuing down that path. I mean, there's different ways you can look at it, segregation or just like doing for oneself. And that's how I look at it, like doing for oneself, building your own. And then when you think of that, that's kind of a form of segregation, right? It's not forced segregation. It's like you choose that. It's voluntary segregation where you just want to build your own everything and be around your own people. And that makes sense. And I think a lot of people like are of that wave. And my mom, she's with that too. So I'll let you guys know like her reaction to certain things specifically that he has said in a video that he recently made. He went live on IG and there was this white woman who joined him on his live. Yes, my mom did grow up during the period of segregation. In fact, because I was asking her, because I like to like interview my parents because I just feel like their history, their experience is so fascinating because it's just diametrically different than I think my experience growing up. Obviously, me growing up in the 80s, my mom grew up, she was born in 53. I was born in 83. So she grew up back then and she was like, yeah, during her time, she said her high school, when she entered high school, it was like the last year, the final year that they were doing like the segregation in the schools with her incoming, I think, high school class, if I got the story correct. But basically, yeah, they were forced to go to different schools. The whites had their school, the blacks had their school. She was telling me, it was funny. She was telling me she said that, yeah, segregation, how it impacted like different aspects of their life in terms of going to the theater, going to see movies, going to the doctor. She said like, unfortunately, of course, the white people had the better facilities, and better doctors, so to speak. While the black people who had to go to the doctor, she's like, yeah, they sent them to like some raggedy ass place and they were just not treated fairly and respectfully. So that was one bad thing. But she told me about like the theaters and she said, like the theaters, it was like an upper level. She said that's where the blacks had to sit, right? This is when my mom was growing up. The blacks had to sit like in the upper level. The whites got to sit down, like I guess closer to the screen, right? The lower level. And she said that was not good for them though. I was like, why? It did not dawn on me, yo. She was like, cause we threw things at them. I was like, oh. Yeah, my mom was with the shits, okay? So, yes, my mom is very woke. I mean, we call it woke, but I think it's just having an awareness. Like, a lot of black people are aware. Your parents, I'm pretty sure, you're watching this, are well aware, right? But I think, like we said before, there's many levels to wokeness, and it kind of plays out into how we live our lives, which can be complicated. It can be complicated, but let's go ahead and get into this video clip here.
Who that?
All right.
We have a white woman on the line. May I help you, young lady?
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well. And you're joining from where?
Australia.
Australia. I've never been to Australia. I'm waiting for my African family to invite me to Australia. May I ask you what brought you to Dr. Umar's live stream?
What brought me to your live stream?
Yes, ma'am. Because my live stream is usually only for African people, and you're not an African.
My mom has been exposed to so much. So nothing really there are some things that may excite her or wow her, but I know Dr. Umar has been viewed as like a very controversial, shocking figure. My mom, watching this like for the first time, she didn't know who he was, right? I introduced her to him, or him to her, right? And she's watching this clip with me, right? This was actually, I think, yesterday. And she didn't budge. She just sitting there listening, watching it, because it's just like, there's nothing new under the sun. Oftentimes we think like our eyes are the first to see something, right? But I'm sure there are many other Dr. Umar Johnsons that grew up in her period in time too. So, very outspoken, controversial figures. He said the white girl seemed like a
So
Cholo
I was
agent.
wondering what brought
Well,
you
I'm
to
So
lie.
my mom said she's looking at the white girl, right? Looking at Dr. Umar too, and she's like, she seemed kind of off a little bit, like something wrong with her, like she on drugs or something. That was my mom's reaction. My mom is very outspoken too as well.
I'm doing a solarium. I'm trying to get as dark as I can, but it's just not natural. It's just not coming.
You're trying to get dark. May I ask you a
My
question?
mom's like,
Yeah.
Because although a lot of
I'm
white
trying to
women
like
get
mimic her
suntan,
reaction. She's like,
they never want to be mistaken for a black woman. So can you help me understand that contradiction between wanting the suntan
Yeah,
but never
interesting.
wanting to be mistaken for an African sister?
Well, it's really interesting because they say don't go too black because you look dirty. Because we can't get the color that you get. Our pigment, like our pigmentation, will never get to yours, to be the same as yours. Does that make
Right.
sense?
You said they said if you go too dark, you might get dirty, but are you aware that the original man and woman of this planet were blue black? They were as black as midnight. That is the original natural color of humanity.
Are you Christian?
I'm African.
Oh, what's your religious belief?
My religion is revolutionary Pan-Africanism.
a lot of people.
Oh, cool. How do we do that? How do I get on
Well,
board with
you
that?
can't do that because you have to be an African to be a revolutionary Pan-Africanist.
Oh, wow. So that's why everyone's like, wow, why is there a white chick doing this? I think you're cool as man.
But going.
wrong
But
with
let me ask you this: in Australia, I read that there's a lot of oppression against the Aboriginal Africans of Australia.
Go fuck. Why would you talk like that?
She's reading the.
Are you listening to my question?
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. The Aboriginals of Australia, the original African people of Australia, I understand they suffer a lot of racism in Australia. Would you agree?
Yep.
Okay. Have you done anything to try to address the racism against my people in Australia?
Yeah, well, my whole street is pretty much full of,
So this kind of sparked a discussion between me and my mom on this whole thing with black women here in America, and this is globally too, with the fake eyelashes and the fake hair. And my mom is opposed to that too. Like she never been into that at all. So she started to talk about that. So a lot of what Dr. Umar Johnson promotes, right, and advocates for or against, like my mom is also in alignment with that. So in terms of like the whole idea about wokeness, it's just like, I think it's just a lifestyle, it's a mindset, right? We add a label to it and call it being woke, but it's just really common sense. Like appreciate your skin and love who you are regardless of anything else. You know, my mom grew up in the South. So things I think are just different depending on where you grew up, what time you grew up in, you know. So let's continue.
well, how do I say it? Well, they're not.
It's like when you grew up in a period where we grew up in a period where we were integrated, right? It was an integrated society, even though, yes, segregation still exists on a very sophisticated, strategic level, where it's like it's in your face, it's there, but sometimes people really don't see it until they really open their eyes, right? But she grew up in a different period where it was like blatant segregations in your face. Reading the signs, she's like, oh yeah, I remember. I said, you remember the signs like for colored people, for whites only? She was like, oh yeah, I remember. She lived this, right? So it's a different reality, and it shapes your perspective, you know what I'm saying, on life. And it definitely shapes how she raised me growing up, because I remember in the household, like race was a discussion in our household growing up. Like a lot of things involve bringing in race, and it's no surprise that I decided to do my dissertation on race, because that's just the way things were growing up in my household. In some households, race isn't even salient that much. It's not a thing, but no, when you live it, you feel it. Racism is something
Well,
you
if
can
they look
feel.
like me, they're
And it shapes
African.
you. It shapes your DNA.
Well, there is some of them in my street. So
So you live in a black neighborhood?
yeah, I do.
Okay, what brought you to that black
Common
neighborhood?
sense in the sense that you shouldn't have to be taught like who you are, right? You shouldn't have to be taught how to respond to these atrocities, to segregation, to racism, to like all of these things, these systems that have been set up against black people. It should come natural, right? If you value yourself and you appreciate who you are, self-preservation, self-love, protecting yourself, right? Defending yourself against something that is attacking you and trying to destroy you, that should be innate, unless you've been brainwashed. But that's why I say it's common sense, because if you've got just common sense, you're going to know how to respond. So, I mean, my mom, because I took her to Cracker Barrel, it's like one of her favorite places, and it's funny because we went inside, and I'm just like, my reaction. I mean, I've been in Cracker Barrel before, also in Atlanta, but they have one in St. Augustine where my mom is from, and I had to point out like, yo, ain't nothing but crackers in this motherfucker. I mean, the food was good, but nothing but crackers in that motherfucker, yo.
I just went there and there was a mosque there, so
You said it's a mosque. You're Muslim?
yeah, I am, yeah.
Okay, Sunni or Shia?
Sunni.
Sunni. I was raised Muslim. Okay.
Oh wow.
So you have a black boyfriend, I take it.
No, sorry, no.
Okay, good. We don't want you to have a black boyfriend
what?
because you are taking an eligible black man away from a black woman who needs.
My mom loved that part. She was like, yes, honey.
That's
Bill.
But I'm gonna tell you guys where my mom disagreed with Dr. Umar Johnson, right? Because she don't agree with everything, and she, just like me, will let you know. She will tell you, right? Without no hesitation.
Hello, how are you there?
hello.
So she brings her son on camera.
But that's not fair to say that.
No, it's not, because African people suffer the most in the world. And in order for us to prepare ourselves, we have to build our family. We have to reconstruct the black family. And we can only do that with a black man, a woman, and child. So,
But why?
My mom said, I was never interested in being with a white man. Ever. I'm like, well, thank you, because that's how I got my complexion. My dad obviously is black, African, American, and beautiful, shall I say, by the way. My mom is African American, but her father was Cherokee Indian. That's a fact. And my mom says, I just don't see how people do it. She's like, I would never be interested in being with a white man, ever. I'm like, okay, I know. Imagine that, though. My mom
correct.
Was a white man.
I could, whatever cultural.
I didn't tell her, though. It's funny. I didn't tell her. Would I date outside my race? I made a video on this before. Like, I would. But in terms of dating and marrying is two different things. Let's just be clear on that, right? And dating in terms of for like business purposes, because there's different types of relationships, right? We'll talk about that later.
That you follow as an African. What? Todd!
Yo, I hate these freaking commercials. Skip.
One could follow them as well. Like,
here's the problem.
Yeah.
She couldn't, because the white woman benefits from a white privilege that she would never relinquish in order to support the black struggle.
Like,
there has never been a white person ever who has given up white privilege to struggle with black people. They may have struggled with black people, but they never relinquished their privilege, which would make them a revolutionary hypocrite. Do you understand?
What are they giving up? What is it they're not giving up?
The privilege. So, for example, with yourself, you have the privilege of not being racially profiled by the police. You have the privilege of not being denied
that's not correct at all.
Say again.
She's not. Why But why are people so mean? Why is everyone being so mean?
Don't worry about the comments. Don't worry about the
They're
comments.
so rude. People are just so rude and judgmental. Why don't they?
But you have to put the judgmentalism in context. We have over 1,000 years of direct contact with white people. And in that 1,000 years or more of direct contact with white people, African people have not been treated fairly. Would you agree with that?
I'm not aware of the statistics. But
Okay,
if that, but I could say that potentially yes.
It's crazy that a lot of white people proclaim they don't know.
Wake that ass up.
Oh, I think I skipped. Let me go back. They proclaim that
So
they
you
don't
are
know,
aware
right,
of the race
about racism and what black people went through in America. Granted, she is from a different country, right? So it's almost like you have to like be an American to really kind of grasp American history, to really feel it, right? Because white people who grew up here, who are descendants, even though they not slave masters, but they still benefit from that. They understand it, right? Because a lot of the energy what black people feel, we still carry that same energy. So of course, like, they understand it. Of course they get it. A lot of you have to be like American almost to really get the experience of African Americans, right? Whether black or white. And a lot of people from other countries just don't get it. Even like people from Africa, they just don't, like, you would think, yo, we are y'all are us. But there's many degrees of separation that prohibits them from being able to identify with our struggle as African Americans. They don't see it. That's the part I hate. Not all, though. I can't say all. Of course, many do know the history. That's where reading and studying the history comes into play. Many do know the history and they have read and they understand, but some are still judgmental, right? And they cast judgment on black people who are having a hard time navigating this system here in America. I'm like, why you can't just get a job? They're so lazy. Why do they steal? Why do they rob? They have so many opportunities. And it really has to be broken down. And I like the way Dr. Umar Johnson breaks it down. There are many others also who have spoken out against the systemic oppression and how it plays out in many different areas of African American life. Medicine and the school system, you know, Tariq Nasheed made the Hidden Colors documentary series where he breaks the many facets of racial oppression down, talking about how it impacts us on many different aspects. So I like that. Let's continue.
racism against the Aboriginals in Australia, correct?
Yes, but it is getting much better. My neighbor is Aboriginal and I love her.
Okay, so when you say the racism is getting better, can you give me 2 examples that will help me understand why you feel it's getting better? What has changed for the Aboriginals in Australia, my African brothers and sisters?
Well, for your African or for the Aboriginals?
It's the same thing. The Aboriginals are an African people.
Oh, okay. Well, pretty much, like for childcare, family daycare centres, so we have like a family daycare centre, and we put, we had someone come and do all Aboriginal, like chalking at the front of the house. Putting all Aboriginal things inside the actual childcare centre. Like,
my mom was like, what the hell is she talking about?
Lady who comes to your house and she teaches the children how to play like the didgeridoo, no sorts of things, read some books.
Like that. My mom really never liked being on camera though. My dad always kept the camera around. He was like the cameraman of our family, making a lot of videos. I have a lot of childhood videos where my dad recorded. And my dad would put the camera on my mom would be like, he don't like being on camera. But I did take some selfies with my mom, so you guys can check those out on my Facebook page here, where I create a whole album visiting my hometown of Jacksonville, Florida. But I wanted to do like a video with my mom. Of course, being a vlogger, why wouldn't I? I don't know if she would be willing. I probably would have to sneak it, yo. Or do like the scholarship challenge. That shit is so funny. I saw those videos where people getting their parents and their grandparents to participate in this so-called scholarship challenge for I think like $10,000. And the catch is that the vlogger, the YouTuber person making the video has to basically lie on their parent to say that they were a former prostitute or some kind of participate in some atrocious act or whatever, and then just to see their reaction to it, to see like, will the parent agree? Will they go along with the shit? Will they be for the shits, right? For their daughter, you know, or their son, just to get the scholarship money? I don't know. I'll be interested to see like my mom's reaction. I kind of want to do that. But I know my mom, so I'm pretty sure she's going to be like, girl, if you don't get out my face and stop that line. But then you never know when $10,000 on the line, though. I think she might be for the shit, so we'll see. You said it would come right after you? When you start.
So yeah, like they implement that a lot, and I love that. And especially even when my daughter goes to a oh my god, I cannot handle these comments. People are so rude.
So let me push back a little bit.
So fucking rude.
Why are you there?
That's
the first question he asked. Like, yo, why are you even here?
Learning how to play the games. Those
White people claim to be one like pro-black and supporting black people, and that's the reason why he talked about being against interracial dating, interracial marriage, because they're not willing to ride. You know, they don't know the struggle. There's gonna be some differences, right? That separates a black woman with a white man, or a black man with a white woman. That's gonna play out. Shit like this, prime example, because she can't even handle the comments. How you can't even handle the comments, yo? She flipping out. They don't know struggle like we know struggle. They don't have the tolerance. She was like, oh my gosh, these people are so mean. They're so real. Yeah, it's like, why even come to his life? You know you were going to, come on, you know you're going to receive backlash. It makes no sense. Do you know who he is? She's just like popped in, right? That's why you say you think she was an agent. Someone sent her. Had to. Because do you not know who he is? Do you not know what kind of following he has? Clueless.
But you were actually just racist because you turned around and said that a white woman would not be able to
marry a black man.
Yeah, but why?
Yeah, because it's not about hating you. Yeah. It's about building up ourselves. Do you understand?
Your cultural beliefs or your cultural needs or whatever it is culturally you need from a white woman, why could I not give that to you? How do you know that I wouldn't give that to you? How do you know that?
Because only the black woman, who is the oldest and most ancient of all females, can provide the oldest and most ancient of all males with the spiritual and psychological energy we need in order to reach God consciousness.
Well, have you tried that? Have you tried being with a white woman? Or has anyone tried?
Never, absolutely not.
Why? So then how could you say something if you haven't tried it? That's everything that you're doing. Because you're...
Of course, I had to keep it honest. I'm like, yeah, he has 2 daughters from 2 different women, which does raise a red flag. But I guess to his defense, like he said, his oldest child, I think, which is 19, he had when he was in his 20s. No excuse, right? But it does make you question, like, for someone who is just so, such an advocate for the black family. I mean, it would make better sense to lead by example. As a leader, a lot of people look up to him. It's one thing to talk and to preach, okay, a black man needs to be with a black woman. But then people ask, okay, well, where's your wife? That's the next question. My mom was curious, like, okay, is he married? Where's his wife at? I'm like, Ma, I'm his wife. No, I'm joking. But it's funny. It's like, where is his wife? You know, and does he have any kids? Is he raising his kids? And my mom also said, which I thought was hilarious. She was like, you know what? Because I told my mom that he has 2 daughters, and she was like, now if his daughters decide to marry a white man, what he gonna do? It's gonna be nothing that he can do. It's gonna eat his ass up. And I was just like, that would be a major coincidence. But it would really be a surprise, though, you think about it, because for someone to be such an advocate for something, oftentimes you see like the children take the different approach, right? They express like a difference of opinion as they can, you know, because it sounds like it's being shoved down their throats. And so they just want to develop their own sense of autonomy to be able to make their own decisions and not to be so-called heavily influenced or directed by the mindset of their parents, you know. But then they may come back around and say, all right, well, I see my mom and dad were right. But that's just a part of growing up, developing into an adult, being able to just make your own decisions independent of what your mom and your dad wants you to do. And I don't know his involvement in his daughter's life, but if he's like, oh, you need to be with a black man, you need to do this, you need to do that, that can actually create the opposite effect. And that's what my mom was speaking to.
Actually doing something
But not all.
all
Hear me
based
out.
on statistics.
But listen,
so now
listen,
I'm saying to you, have you tried it? No.
Yo, my mom even asked me out of the blue, like this was I was in New York. Asked me, she was like, because I think I was telling her about my date that I was going on. This was around the holidays. And she asked me, was he white? I'm just like, why would she ask me that? What made her think that? I don't know, but my mom, she got some really good instincts though. But I'm like, nah, Mom. No, he's not white. He is black. You really think that I would date? You really think that I would date a white man? Whatever.
Is melanin deficient. You have a melanin deficiency.
Yeah.
That melanin deficiency affects your ability to reach higher states of spiritual growth. And so when I make love to my wife, when I reproduce with my wife, the 2 of us making love is an act of oneness. So in that moment,
do you think it's appropriate for you to talk about you making love with your wife online?
Well, listen to me. I'm not speaking of
why
sex.
Are you cutting him off?
I know.
I'm speaking of spiritual intimacy.
That's why she's getting a tag, yo. You like
Well,
on
I think
page.
it's
Of course,
appropriate.
he's
You
gonna have
appreciate
followers.
that?
Have a supporter who's gonna vouch for him.
It's appropriate as long as you're not being vulgar, right?
Yeah.
But the point I'm trying to make
What,
is,
girl?
if I reproduce with a melanin deficient woman, if I reproduce with a melanin deficient woman, that will restrict my 2 of us making love is an act of oneness. So in that moment,
do you think it's appropriate for you to talk about you making love with your wife online?
Well, listen to me. I'm not speaking of sex.
I know.
I'm speaking of spiritual intimacy.
Making love, same thing.
Well, I think it's appropriate.
You think she would
as long as
appreciate
you're not-
that?
Barometer.
Listen to me. It's
Nothing
appropriate
wrong with
as long
talking
as you're not
about.
being
Oh, it's
vulgar,
something wrong
right?
with black men
But
talking about
the point
making
I'm
love
trying
to
to
a
make
black woman, but there's nothing
If
wrong
I reproduce with a
when it comes to people talking about homosexual acts online, right? You can talk about that, but when a black man is only talking about making love to a black woman, oh, that's inappropriate. You think that's inappropriate?
melanin deficient woman, if I reproduce with a melanin deficient woman, that will restrict my ability to achieve God consciousness.
This should really
See,
go without
the
saying.
black man and woman are
It
the
does,
oldest
because
in the
every
world.
other race, they're about self-preservation. You don't see much race mixing when it comes to Indians. Even the Chinese, the Japanese. Not to say they don't cross over, but you don't see much of it, right? It should go without saying. The things that he promotes and talks about, right? It's just common sense. But because we live the context of our society that we live in, that has an agenda against the black family, the black community, to divide us, and people think that it is fake, it's bogus, but no, this is obvious, this is a real deal, this is a real issue that we've been facing, because we live in this context where black men are targeted, where yes, there is a school to prison pipeline. The things that he talks about seem so shocking. It's like, wait, you shouldn't be saying those things, because most black people are in line with the system of white supremacy. They just like shut their mouths and go along with it. Go along. They don't speak up. Other races don't have this problem. Why? Because they're not being targeted like we were. It's just like, can they just leave us the fuck alone? They took us from Africa. We came over here. We built this shit. Damn, there y'all go. Be happy. Now leave us alone. Why is there still problems? But I think, it's a dynamic where black people haven't left it alone, right? We still bring it up. We still have this animosity against white people. And I think even if the animosity was gone, because a lot of black people, of course, are very forgiving. Have forgiven white people, don't bring it up, don't express any hatred, any ill intent, right? Any unforgiveness towards white people. But yet and still we are mistreated. We're misjudged, and it's just an agenda that's being perpetuated across many different spheres within our society, especially in the media. We are targeted. It's unfortunate. So yes, when you have a black man that is speaking out against, this is my mama calling me, but you have a black man that is speaking out against this system, of course it seems like he's doing something wrong. Like, wait a minute, because we have been conditioned just to go along and just shut up. A lot of black people are still suffering from the post-traumatic slave syndrome disease, which is kind of leading into my next point in my mom's reaction, where granted, I said that my mom agrees with Dr. Umar, so don't get it mistaken. She is with the shit. She agrees. But I think the same thing which she told me growing up, she told me this growing up. But I am my mother's child because my mom is outspoken, but to a certain extent though, right? Like a lot of black people, we with the shits. Like, bring it, right? But to a certain extent. My mom has always said to me growing up, I will never forget her words. She said, your mouth, you be smart. You're a very smart girl, Danielle. But your mouth is going to get you in trouble. And I'm like, I don't see that I have anything wrong with my mouth. And I don't think Dr. Umar Johnson sees it. He doesn't see it, right? Because even when I made the video about him being the most controversial psychologist, I think that's a video that he also shared like on his page. And he said he doesn't see himself as controversial. He's just doing the good work for the people. He's on a mission. He's so focused that he doesn't even see. I think he knows that what he's doing is revolutionary. But sometimes it just takes people's reaction so that you can see like, wow, you are doing something that's very transformative. That really not too many other people or no one really is doing, right? So you don't really see it like, okay, your mouth is problematic. Your words are so triggering, right? Or divisive, but not really, because we're already divided. His words aren't necessarily divisive. But they do hit home. They do resonate. They do spark a fire within us, I think. Going against the grain. So that's the problem. And so my mom, I don't want to say it's negative. I think it's more protective, so to speak. of his own personal interest, but granted, he is for the people. But my mom's reaction, I guess one may say it would be negative, apart from her agreeing with him for the most part. She said the same thing about him that she said about me, like, he talks too much. She was like, he talked too much. I'm like, well, Ma, he's an orator, he's a lecturer. She was like, oh, okay, he's a lecturer. Like, yeah, he goes around, but not in the sense, like the literal sense that he talks too much. She's just saying, like, his words could get him in trouble. And I had shared with her that, yeah, he already has gotten into trouble for his words, right? Where his credentials, his professional credentials as a school psychologist was on the line, right? Like, they had reported him to the State Board of Psychology in Pennsylvania. But he doesn't care about that. Like, when you're focused and he's invested so much of his time and energy for this cause, you don't really care. You're just so focused. You don't really see it as a problem, because it's not a problem. It's a problem to the status quo, but it's not. You're not doing anything wrong. And when you know you know that your words are coming from a good place for your people. Yes, it's going to ruffle some feathers on a socio-political level, but people who speak from truth, where there's divine order speaking through them, they don't see it like that. You don't see it as, okay, your words are bad or you're saying the wrong thing. You feel like you are in alignment, which he is. You are in alignment with the universe, with your calling, with your purpose. You are right on time. Whatever comes about from that, when people go on his videos and they leave negative comments, or they go and make their own videos on their channel, like, that's them. That's because they have a problem. That's how people who feel like they're walking in their purpose, that's what they see. Who's that? Some kind of cute man walking past here. Like, but yeah, that's just how they see it. So, and that's how they will always see it. And I think that's why him and his father bump heads so much. Well, I call myself trying to be the mediator between Dr. Umar Johnson and his father. And I had some conversations with his father by phone, and just wanted to get his father's perspective, because I know I get Dr. Umar Johnson. But like I was saying, sometimes, like older generations, they have been, I think they're at a point where they have just accepted things for what they are. Change, why change change what? For what, right? It is kind of the way it is. And I think his dad's mindset is similar to like my mom's mindset. I'm pretty sure they probably will get along, because it's just like, okay, they live through it. It's not like they are oblivious to what is happening, what has happened too. Of course they're aware, but they're just like, okay, it is what it is. How much can you change, right? About the world. But he birthed this beautiful soul, Dr. Umar Johnson. He even named him. My mom was asking, oh, who named him? His name Umar. And she said, I'm surprised he got that name. I say, actually, his father named him that. His mom didn't name him that. His mom named him Jermaine. His dad named him Umar. And to see that they're bumping heads. But this clip here is almost coming to an end. So let's see.
So we
Ruby,
are the
cute. Be quiet. Can you please say
What's going
something to
on?
these people? They're so nasty.
No, well, you have to
It's
understand.
9:15 a.m. in Australia, and I have 2 children. So, yeah.
What is your
Something
nationality? May I ask?
I'm Scottish.
Scottish. I haven't been to Scotland. Okay.
Yeah.
How do the Scottish feel about black people?
You said we are the battery
I'm not
to these
sure.
people? Battery to who people? Battery to what people?
You're not sure. How do you feel about black people?
And who is we?
I love them.
You loved it?
Not all of them. I'm scared of some of them because
I might go to the beach today.
some of them are a bit.
So I think this video is
crazy.
coming to an end. But yeah, my mom, I think she likes Dr. Umar. But I also, another criticism, right? Aside from, he talks too much, so to speak. Like I said, I think there's more from a protective sense, right? And her wanting to protect his own personal interests in terms of his safety, right? And well-being. Because he's living his life as a sacrifice to the people. So he knows the risk that he runs, right? He doesn't care. Like, what's more important is the outcome, the change that he's going to bring about. That weighs more heavily than, I think, his physical time here on this earth, right? As long as he's achieved the mission of bringing about systemic change within American society and across the world, that weighs more heavily than, what years that he may sacrifice, right? If his life is cut short, so to speak. But she also said that black talk, she was like, black this and black that. She was like, that can get on her nerves. And I get it. I think it was already starting to agitate her because, like, after this video here, and I only played the clip where the white woman had come onto his live. So we watched that first. That was like the first video that I showed my mom with Dr. Umar Johnson in it. And then I went over to play the interview that he did with Nick Cannon. And we watched that in its entirety. But yeah, I mean, his talk is black talk, right? Yeah, it is black this and black that. And I think for some people, they're like, they're kind of over it, especially when I think there's like some cognitive dissonance happening, and I get where it comes from. But I was explaining to my mom that it's not about self-hate, because she said it can kind of come off as self-hate, and that's how some people take it. But we've been taught to hate ourselves. We've been taught that we need to be accepted and to integrate with society. So it's like, where does his mission fit in with integration? It kind of doesn't. Right? And some black people look at, white people, they're the good white people out there. They've taken care of me. And my mom, unfortunately, has a long-standing history of going to the hospital. And this is just my own personal belief, kind of like creating her own medical conditions, in a sense. Like when you hand your life over to this system that you can't trust, right? But I think sometimes we kind of compartmentalize different parts of the system, right? So we'll say, there's police genocide, and that's a bad thing. And we'll say, segregation was a bad thing, right? But that was then, and this is a bad thing, right? All these different bad aspects of society, we are aware that they exist, right? A lot of black people are aware that they exist, but then we'll say, this part is good. Like, it's good that they have health care, and, they have all these services and they save lives. That's a good thing. That's not harming anyone, right? And those are white people behind that medical system. And they trust those white people with their lives, and my mom has fallen culprit to that. And I think as a result, I'm not going to really get into it, but my mom does have a lot of significant medical conditions. I think that have been made worse, probably were even created, right, by going and receiving their treatment. But it's like, what's the alternative? And that's the whole point for the Pan-African movement, right? It's deeper than, just getting all black people to unite globally. But it's really about self-preservation, building our own infrastructure, our own hospitals and grocery stores and banks and everything. And not only for it to be owned and operated just by black people, because it's one thing to have black skin, so to speak, right? It's another thing to be conscious, to be African up here in the mind. Those are two different things. If you got African skin, but you're not African in your mind, that can be even more dangerous. Because that's going to determine how you treat your own people. If you buy into the ways of the system with the way they with the way they say patients should be treated, how to deliver health care, how to implement treatments for various conditions, right? Which we know are not really safe, but people rely on that anyway, i.e. medication. Just like, are you serious? That's going to alter your DNA, and then you're going to be dependent upon that medication. My mom takes so many medications, but that's a whole nother story. But that's just an example that I was trying to paint. It's just like, for some black people, they do experience that cognitive dissonance, right? And going back to her criticism of Dr. Umar Johnson with the black this and the black that, many African Americans have aligned themselves with certain aspects of white American society that they deem as good for the people. For example, like the health care, right? Oh, they're good, and other things that we rely on. You know, when we travel, when we go to hotels, and you know, we're welcomed by the hospitality staff, which is just like, oh, they're nice. And so, on one hand, they hear a black man who is speaking good, which she did a test and say, oh yeah, he's saying some good stuff, he's speaking good, but they're like, but you can't be about division. You can't be speaking against all white people, because there are good aspects of American society. When we went to Crock Barrel, oh, the waitress, she's white, and she come up, and y'all know me, like I always have my radar up. I don't hate white people, but I'm very protective of myself. And the white lady comes up to the table, and she's like, oh, hi, trying to be nice. Of course, that's her job, right? I get it. And I had my hair in a bun, and she asked me, oh, does that hurt your head? She was like, oh, because when I tried to put a bun in my hair, it hurt my, like, no, it doesn't hurt. I'm used to it. Why would it? Does it give you a headache? That would give me a headache. Bitch, it ain't got nothing to do with you taking my order, right? My mom looking at me. Mom already know me, y'all. Like, I have a smart mouth. I have respect for my mom. I was trying to be nice, right? And so that was one thing the waitress said. And she, like, from that was like the first kind of interaction she had. And it was just irking. Like, she was already irking me. Like, and I'm thinking, like, you better not touch my freaking hair, because we're going to have a problem up in here. I didn't want to create a scene. The moment really is about me spending time with my mom and enjoying that time. I didn't want to create a scene or to taint the experience necessarily. But it's just like, I didn't taint it. It's just like, this fucking bitch coming up here, you're saying certain things, right? And I think it's just the energy. Like, I feel people's energy can read other energy. I'm sure her spirit read my spirit and know I ain't with that shit, right? So she talking to my mom, and she was like, oh, you're such a beautiful lady. She was like, do you have Korean in your blood? Anyone ever say you look Korean? This is what the white lady said. I'm like, oh, mom just sitting there smiling, like, no, you're being nice. My mom being nice. And it's just like, I think that is a microaggression. That is so inappropriate, I feel like. And I wanted to say, no, she is African in her blood, right? It's African. Every race comes from African. But, you know, sometimes there are times when you speak, there are times when you be silent. I just felt like my spirit was just something, y'all don't say nothing. Because my mom know me, like, I'm outspoken. That's what she said, your mouth going to get you in trouble. And it has. My mom was right, it has. But whatever. And I'm just looking at her and looking at my mom, just like, I didn't like, because when she came up, right, she going to come on my side and lean on this is the way she lean on my freaking chair. At the crack up, leaning on my chair, looking at my mom like she want to have a whole sister girl conversation. She's white. Want to have a sister girl conversation. Mom talking about, oh yeah, you're so beautiful. You look Korean. Why can't she just be African and be beautiful? That's that bullshit. You got to have another race mix in you to be and embrace your beauty. It's just like, I wasn't feeling that whole interaction there, and she all up in my business. Oh, my mom, this is my mom doing too, because she was like, oh yeah, she's here visiting, she live in New York, and I'm just like, and the lady was like, oh really? How do you like New York? And I'm just, My mind actually had shut off at that point. It just does it automatically when I'm not interested in an interaction. My brain just shuts off. So I'm kind of tuned out. And I'm like, what? And she was like, honestly, I don't even remember what she was asking me because my brain just shut down. I'm just like, my mom kind of answering for me because my mom see that I don't really want to have anything to say. Like, I just wasn't feeling her energy. Get that fake shit on, right? And so after she left the table, I'm talking to my mom. I was like, I'm like, Mom, they really nice down here. And she's like, yeah. I said, that's that Southern hospitality. But this is, I think, where me and my mom differ. And I'm pretty sure my mom has, like, been through, I've seen it growing up, where my mom, she has spoke her piece in interactions that we've had with white people growing up. And I don't think our like perspectives are that much different. I just think my mom just tries to save face. That's what it is. It's just a lot of saving face, and I just feel like that saving face just requires so much energy, fake energy. I don't like that fake energy. Like, if on one hand you feel that you know what I'm saying, really feeling like that with certain energies, then just express that, right? But I think my mom's just trying to be nice, and that's just an example. It's just like, that's how she was saying, basically, about her criticism with Dr. Umar and the black, talking about black this and black that, and she was saying how that would get on her nerves, hearing that. But I mean, I think anything you hear in abundance, right, like over and over, repeatedly, over and over again, it can get kind of old. But it's never gotten old to me. It would never get old. I actually like it, and I think it get old because maybe people just want to see change. So my mom is 68, so maybe she's heard it for so long. She's heard it for so long that it's just like, okay, what really has changed? This is like the same old shit, just a different day. That's why I think when I initially put on Dr. Umar video, my mom kind of didn't buzz. Some people were like, oh my gosh, he's, wow. But she was just like sitting there listening to him like intently, hearing what he had to say, but it's not nothing new. What are you talking about, Ricardo? You say freedom of so-called speech? Maybe I'm missing what you're saying. But in reference to what? Freedom of speech in reference to what? Oh, you said that's fear talking through by my mom saying that Dr. Umar talks too much? I think, yeah, fear could be driving that with the mindset of, wanting to protect, right? And she said the same thing about me. Like, growing up, that was her exact words. She's like, your mouth is going to get you in trouble, because I have always been like that person against the grain, speaking my mind. For some people, they have a filter, right? So they just like, all right, I'm not going to say that because it's going to get me in trouble. I know it's going to get me in trouble, even though it could be the right thing for you to say, right? So that's where she's coming from, and it's within reason. I think we need to be able to like put ourselves in the shoes of our parents, right? To see where they are coming from. I talked to Dr. Umar Johnson's father for hours on the phone. He still sends me text messages and stuff, right? He's a sweet man. He reminds me of my mom, like the mindset, right? Because, they lived this. They went through it, and people say, okay, times haven't really changed, but they have changed, you guys. We have to like give justice, right, and honor to the experience that our parents lived through that we know was much different than what we're going through, right? It's different. We experience subtle discrimination, subtle racism, right? They experience that shit very blatantly. It was harsh. And a lot of black people just obliged. They complied, right? Because they didn't want to get beaten. They didn't want to get hurt. They didn't want to get thrown in jail. They just like, all right, let me just go along with the go along. I think we have a little bit liberty to speak out, right? Freedom of speech. We have more liberty to do that. To talk our shit at the protest in front of white police officers and they not do nothing, right? Just stand there and they freaking armor and shit. But think times have changed, and I think, you know, the time they grew up in, you know, it was just out of their own survival, their own safety, just to keep it, you know what I'm saying, at a minimum. And if they had something opposing to say, they would say it amongst themselves and be very careful before they spoke out. Kind of reminds me of a conversation I had with an African. And he's like, oh, saying like hyping up America, right, glorifying it. Oh, you got it easy over there. You know, it's not the same for us. And you know, in Africa, we can't just be so outspoken against the government, right? You know that the government is doing wrong things. They're corrupt. But they say that they don't really have that liberty over there in Africa or else. I'm like, yes, you do. You can do whatever you want. You're a human being. Like, that's just my perspective. Like, you can do whatever you want. Fuck that. Even if it costs you your life, like, at least you know you're doing it for a cause. Like, fuck that shit, right? But I think it comes down to a decision one makes. Like, do you want to put your life on the line for truth? Or you just want to live life and just enjoy your life, the years that you've been given, right? Whatever your life expectancy is, do you want to just do that? That seems easier. Obviously, it's easier just to live life. And I said this before, like, black people, we fight so much, like, can we just live? Like that song says, the little boy, man, I just want to live. Why do I always have to freaking fight every single day? Can we just enjoy life? It's hard. Many are called, few are chosen, right? Maybe we all are called, right? But only a few of us really have that inkling of a spirit within us that is willing to rise above it and fight against whatever at any cost. It's tricky though, because it's like, okay, what do you have to fall back on? Right, a lot of black people are afraid of losing their jobs. They speak out and they join forces with the movement, but there will be repercussions, right? They fear repercussions. What's going to happen if they're seen on the news and they get arrested in a protest, right? Or they're seen making a video and speaking their true mind in alignment with these very controversial figures. It's like, what will be the repercussion? Sometimes people fear that. So they just zip. They keep their mouth shut. It's just like, that's much easier. And it's much easier, I think, to do what everyone else is doing, right? And what a majority of black people are doing, right? They're being placated with these little trinkets of an iPhone and fucking Jordans and things that are material value that they feel gives them a sense of inclusion with American society and a sense of equality, because you look around and they see, okay, well, I have an iPhone 10 or whatever the newest version X, I don't know, I don't keep up with it. They feel like, okay, I have that. White people got the same thing, right? You know, or, you know, white people can buy homes in nice suburbs. All right, I just bought a home. So they feel a sense of equality when it ain't really about equality, though. I think that was a trick. It was about equality, being treated fairly, right? Given that they, like my mom said, had different facilities, right? The black clinics or hospitals were raggedy for the black people. Meanwhile, the white ones were nice. They got the red carpet, and that's what you deserve, right? As a human being. So it made sense for them to want to fight for equality back then. But I think the bigger picture, which what Dr. Martin Luther King was saying, as he reached the latter part of his time, was, you know, it's probably better just to really build our own and to fight for redistribution of wealth, right? Not so much equality or inclusion, because that can be a whole nother freaking beast to overcome, right? You're trying to fight for, want to be equal. What does that say really about who you are? Wanting to be equal to a person that really don't even measure up to who you are on a genetic level, on any level for that matter, physical level. Like I made videos about who's more dominant. Yes, one can say, okay, white men are more dominant on a political level because they've done that. They've stole that from us, right? And by very atrocious means, I would say, right? But is it really atrocious if it's just about survival? So that's where philosophy and politics comes in. But when it comes to a biological, spiritual level, black people are very strong. We just, like, we need to walk in that. We know that. And, you know, I can go on and on this video. But I like to see my mama's reaction to Dr. Umar, of course, because I like him. I'm a supporter of him. And to see that, you know, she's with the shits too, which I knew she would be. But I just wanted to expose her to Dr. Umar because a lot of people don't really know who he is, even though he thinks everyone does. A lot of people don't know. He's still kind of an underground figure, unless like you have made mainstream, which I think he kind of crossed over a little bit with mainstream with certain interviews that he's done. But he's not in mainstream news on a regular basis for the general black population to really know who he is, unless you're on social media. My mom doesn't, she's not really on social media like that. So that was interesting. But on that note, I'm interested to hear like what you guys think about like the dichotomy that I kind of pointed out between different generations and how they respond to the new leaders. Because it's not to say, oh, we don't have any leaders, where are all the leaders? I think even Dr. Umar pointed out that the last leader for the black community who really brought about systemic change was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. There hasn't been one that came after him since, I guess, of course, unless you acknowledge, you know, he acknowledges himself, right? But I think there are many different leaders. I just think how we go about it is different. I think that mainstream media makes a conscious effort to not really blast. Like a lot of leaders that are out there doing the work, but they're not making mainstream news. It's not promoted like it was back then. So it seems as though, okay, things are happening, which I honestly could work in our favor, because if they don't know, which of course they know, but if the majority of people don't know, it's kind of easier to leverage the movement. It's easier to make moves when people don't know. And I think that's also alluding back to what the criticism my mom made about him talking too much, which I pointed out that perhaps maybe if he didn't go on social media, give a step-by-step layout of what he's doing as far as building the FDMG Academy, it wouldn't be facing sabotage like it is. You know, the irony is that people are saying, oh, he's being mischievous and he's stealing the money and we don't know what he's doing with the school, when he's really given a step-by-step play of what he's doing before he even does it. That could have been the biggest mistake when you know you're building something that is revolutionary. It's like, this is a war you're fighting. The school is a manifestation of you participating in the race war. People don't even know like we're in a race war. We're still in a race war, right? And Dr. Umar has strapped up his boots, put on his armor, purchased the freaking school, building the school. It's like building a fort, symbolically speaking. That's what we're at war. He's building a fortress. Because you think of the purpose of the school, what it serves is tearing down walls that they have built against the black community. It's changing the minds of young black men, young African men. Like Frederick Douglass said, it's better to build strong men than, better to build young boys than to repair broken men. That's his whole motivation for building the FDMG Academy, right? So it's major. People recognize that it's major. Oh, and I almost forgot. Like, me and my mom, we had a lot to say about Dr. Umar, but like the whole thing about how people see him as an extremist, right? Because with the school, he says that he only wants black staff. We know that he only accepts funding from black donors. What else did he say? He doesn't want any of his staff to be married or dating someone outside of the race, right? Which may be viewed as being extreme, but I get it. And my mom was just like, what? That's crazy. She was like, oh God, no. So, you know, it's up. Everyone has their own opinion. And my mom was like warning me, like, you better be careful not to be talking too much. And that, like, my mom has always done that. I think that's just like her being a mommy. Mom, like, she just called me during the video. I'm just like, she's be making sure that I'm okay. Just her mom, and I'm just like, Mom, good, you know. I think it's just, you know, mother's instinct, just like Dr. Umar Johnson's father. It's a father's instinct for him to get on video, and to the public it seems as though he is speaking against his own son, but really he's speaking on his behalf for his own safety, because he knows that what his son is doing is revolutionary, it's dangerous, it's a threat. It's a threat to the system, to the structure of white supremacy, to the dominant structure. It's a threat. So he knows with that comes repercussions. And so that's why he disowned him, so to speak. He said, oh, I'm disowning my son, and I don't have anything to do with that, because his own life was being threatened. Like, he told me this. They were like giving him death threats, and it was crazy. I'm not going to go into detail, but it's unfortunate. And so we're talking about a war. We're talking about the art of war. And his dad, ironically, his dad wasn't in the military. He's a former Marines, you know. So I think that's why it hurts Dr. Umar so much, because his dad being, you know, a soldier, a Marine, you're willing to fight and put your life on the line for the military, our country, but what about the black community? Which he does have his own movement, Stop Killing Us movement. But the fact that he is like not aligned with his own son's movement, right? I made videos about that, but I'm gonna end this video on that note. Feel free to share your comments below. I just think it's fun. I have much more time to spend with my mom, so who knows, I may do a video with her, I may not. Johnny, hi to everyone who's watching. Feel free to share this video, leave your comments below, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Love you guys. I hope it doesn't rain. It said it was gonna rain. It did rain yesterday. Oh my gosh, that storm, those rain was coming down. I'm gonna go to the beach, but who knows, we'll see how the weather is. I'll catch you guys in the next